In this video we're going to be solving quadratics using the null factor law, or general quadratics in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, and I will move on to harder ones. Let's just remind us what an FL means. It means null factor law. Now the null factor law states that if there are the product of two numbers is 0, then either or both of those numbers is 0. So for example, if you've got a times b equals 0, then either a equals 0 and b equals 0. Okay, so that's our null factor law. So we're going to solve quadratics in the general form, usually ones that are in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. All right, now just for a bit of extension, if it equals 0, that means the y equals 0. That means we're finding the x-intercepts, just in case anybody's looking for an extension there. So in order to do the null factor law, all expressions have to be factorized. So you'll need to watch the how to factorize video if you're not sure. So let's first of all solve this quadratic here. X squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. Now I'm going to factorize first, so that becomes x plus 2 multiplied by x plus 3 equals 0. Now the idea between the null factor law is we can use the idea that two numbers multiply together to make 0. So this bracket, if this bracket's 0, doesn't matter what this bracket is, 0 times whatever equals 0. Similarly, if we look at the other case, let's look at this bracket. If I make this bracket -3, so this is 0, 0 times whatever equals 0. So we're going to use this idea to solve. So you can, this is called NFL, null factor law. So we say x plus 2 equals 0 or x plus 3 equals 0. Now each of those equations can be solved individually just by solving their linear equations, so they're not too difficult to solve. So our solutions to this equation are x equals -2 or x equals -3. Let's look at a second example. X squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0, and again we're solving. And you'll need to factorize first, so x minus 3 and x minus 2. Factorizing. Now let's have a look at how we solve this. Using the null factor law, I say either this bracket equals 0, so x minus 3 equals 0, or x minus 2 equals 0. And each of these equations can be solved individually, so you get x equals 3 or x equals 2. Now let's go on to some harder quadratics. For example, let's look at ones that are not automatically obviously in the form of ax, or in the general form ax squared plus bx plus c. So x squared equals 4 bracket x plus 15. Okay, also it's not equal to 0. So in order to solve this, we need to get it in a form that's equal to 0. So I'm going to expand the right hand side first. So I get x squared equals 4x plus 60. Then what I'm going to do is move everything over to the left hand side so that the whole equation equals 0. So that gives me x squared minus 4x minus 60 equals 0. Okay, now this is a nice one to factorize. It's basically using those products. So of course, what two numbers multiply together to make -60 that also add together to make -4? Well, minus 10 and 6. So when I factorize that, I've got x minus 10 and x plus 6 equals 0. Now let's solve each of these individual equations using the null factor law. We can say that either x minus 10 equals 0 or x plus 6 equals 0, and solve each of these equations. So that's x equals 10 and that's x equals -6. Just one more example. Again, another one that's not automatically obvious that it's going to be a quadratic. So this one is x plus 6 over x equals x. So let's get rid of that denominator by multiplying both sides by x, leaving us with x plus 6 on the left hand side equals x squared on the right hand side. Now to solve this, we need to move everything over to one side. So I'm going to move all these two terms over to the right hand side so that the equation equals 0. X squared minus x minus 6. Then I need to factorize. Well, again, two numbers that multiply together to make -6 that also add together to make -1. It's going to be x minus 3 and x plus 2. Now to solve this, I'm going to use the null factor law. So, and you do have to say the method that you're using to solve these. So either x minus 3 equals 0 or x plus 2 equals 0. So solving each of these gives me x equals 3 or x equals -2.